EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. It's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen, as we inch another day closer to the NFL draft. Some news in Eagle land and plenty of great topics here on the show today. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, brother?
I'm doing well. A little windy up here, Zander. Keep you up to date on the beautiful weather I'm sure you have. We are not having it up in the Delaware Valley. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Johnny Mac, you come down here and you're not ready for it, brother. That's this heat down here. You walk out, you got sweat dripping off in seconds down here. So it's hot down here. But now all good, Johnny Mac. A couple things happened yesterday in Eagle land. Well, not happened, but a couple more reports in the top 30 visits. We'll talk about that today. We're going to get into. I'm going to do something here where we project the starters, John, at each position where there is obviously been change on the team. We'll talk about Nick Sirianni a little bit. So I got plenty to talk about, but a couple new top 30 visits we'll get into. Did you happen to catch the NCAA championship last night?
I was watching Monday Night Raw.
Oh, yeah. I know. Somebody in the chat was saying that they're not watching the Natty because of that.
Yeah, I college basketball, but I do watch the end, and obviously disappointing. But Howie keeps winning, man. I'll tell you, Howie's a Florida guy, for those who don't know. So, yeah, Howie got another one from that perspective.
There you go.
So congratulations to Florida, but, the NCAA tournament's lost its luster over the years. We talked about it, 4 number 1 seeds, the upsets, the Cinderellas. Not as much fun as it used to be. Plus, the game has changed. Yeah, so, but for all those who enjoy it, it's obviously still an exciting moment. And I was shocked to find out that Florida is the only team that has 3 national championships in basketball and football. How about that for the Florida people?
Yeah, that's a good stat. My sister, my oldest sister, went to the University of Florida, so she was all jacked up. She sent me a picture of my nephew doing the gator bait thing this morning, wearing one of my Kango hats. So I thought that was a pretty cool picture I got this morning from him. So
our friend Colin Thompson went to Florida before he came back to Temple.
I'll tell you what, Houston had that. Houston's defense was unbelievable all game. Florida couldn't buy a bucket. And then the end comes and, it turns a little bit. Houston can't buy a bucket. They go cold, and Florida pulls out the win. So good game there, though. University of Florida is national champions. How was Monday Night Raw? Good?
Yeah, it was pretty good. No Rock, though. So that was for those asking. Yeah, that's a bit of a strange situation. So, it's tough to book if you don't know when he's going to be there.
Yeah, right.
But that's the wrestling equivalent of rich people problems. So we'll see how it shakes out. But, it's almost WrestleMania time, right before the draft this year.
Yep, it's a couple weeks away, so we'll see how that all goes. Johnny Mac, in Eagle land, let's get into some of the Eagle news. We'll talk about plenty of topics today here on the show. Yesterday, 2 new top 30 visits, John, another cornerback and another defensive tackle as they continue to as at least it continues to reveal potentially what this team is thinking for the draft this year. Defensive tackle TJ Sanders from South Carolina. I know we have a couple of South Carolina people in our chat. So there you go, a South Carolina player, TJ Sanders, defensive tackle. And then an Ole Miss cornerback, Trey Amos. All right, so another cornerback is in, Johnny Mac. And there you go, defensive line, cornerback, offensive line. That is the theme of these top 30 visits, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, certainly most notably offensive line, defensive front, but the cornerback part of it is a little bit intriguing because of what went on last year. And, you got 2 high-level cornerbacks at the top of the draft, which, would in theory say, all right, you're not going to go cornerback again. But, if you think about what the Eagles lost, they did lose some significant numbers when you talk about Darius Slay, salary cap casualty, Isaiah Rodgers, free agency, potential to start elsewhere, and then even Avonte Maddox, which I know people don't care much about, but the guy played all over the place. He played nickel, he played dime, he played safety.
Right.
And that's versatility you really value in your backups. So that's what they lost. And, there's some, I'm high on Kelee Ringo. That hasn't changed, but I do think the Eagles' strategy of looking at so many corners tells you that they might not be quite as sold on some of these younger corners, and that includes obviously Eli Ricks as well, and even guys down the roster like lesser known guys like AJ Woods and Tariq Castro Fields, guys who are here, Perry Nickerson, who's more of a veteran guy, but it tells you they don't quite think as much as those players as they might claim,
Right.
when they try to punch them up. But yeah, so if you look at Amos and Maxwell Hairston, those guys are in the equation for being right there as bridge picks, 32 to 42, somewhere in that range. Maybe 30 to 45, somewhere in that range. And then Jacob Parrish is more of played outside, as most people do in college, but because of his size deficiency, probably is going to be projected to be a nickel player in the NFL. He's probably more the depth guy. You hope balls to day 3, maybe that type of thing. But
Right.
to me, the theme is more important. The theme is always more important with these visits. And I don't know what people think, because we said it. These were revealed yesterday, not that they actually worked out yesterday.
Right.
I just want to clarify that. But the theme is more important to me, and they're looking at corners. So that tells me they're not as confident in their depth as they perceive to be at times when they talk about it.
We'll see what ends up happening. He's 6'1", Johnny Mac. So yesterday we talked about the corner Jacob Parrish. He was a little smaller. I think he was 5'9".
He's a nickel guy.
He's a nickel guy. So this, Trey Amos here, 6'1", 195. So he's going to project it more as an outside corner. But maybe that does tell John that Kelee Ringo not impressive to them, or they're not sold that he's going to be the answer. I mean, if they draft another cornerback in the first round, I'll be stunned. I'm not going to lie. I'll be stunned.
So will I. They have such a need up front at a position they value more at positions, because it's multiple positions. And it's much deeper too. So I'm continuing to play the odds here. Now, obviously, when you talk about the way draft people on the internet talk about it, the Eagles are not going to like every player they tell you it's going to be a first round pick. That just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So, all these defensive front people, whether they're defensive tackles, edge rushers, they're not going to like all of them. But there's more of those than there are of cornerbacks that are worthy of that first spot, whether they pick a 32 or trade up, targeted trade up, or targeted trade down. There's just more of them. So it's more likely. And you've seen how many defensive front people they've looked at, TJ Sanders, or are doing their homework on, TJ Sanders being the latest. I think the odds are still dramatically in that favor. Offensive line 2, and then cornerback, though, you would have to say is 3, and that's a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
Although maybe it shouldn't be, considering the 3 players they lost.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of TJ Sanders, John? Big defensive tackle coming in, another one there to come in. South Carolina player. He was pretty damn good in college. I mean, I'm an SEC watcher, so I did watch him. Obviously, wasn't completely locked in, but I like that. I like that move. We'll see what they, obviously they end up landing him. But what do you think of that player?
Yeah, I mean, he's a legit potential first round pick, so he could be in the mix for 32 if you're going to stay there and falls. And he's
Right.
just a carbon copy of the style, not the player, but the style of Milton Williams. So, I mean, that to me is a day one starter. And there's really two guys that you could probably say that about that could potentially, and Walter Nolan being the other one, but somebody's got to fall to 32. Daniel Jeremiah was tweeting yesterday, and it's every year, and I've mentioned it on the show. He's talking to agents, and they got 67 first round picks. I mean, somebody's got to fall.
Right.
DJ's quote was, "Great news. I've talked to a bunch of agents, and apparently there are going to be 67 first round picks this year." They hype up everybody. And you hear this and everybody, and you'll see it all the time. Like, I get it with the kid from UCLA. Oh, he's going to be a first round pick. Well, he might be because he's got a high ceiling, but he could also be a third round pick. Kaylee Ringo back in the day, people were hyping up early in the process as first round pick. He came in the draft almost certainly a second round pick, and all of a sudden he's there at the top of the fourth round.
Right.
Don't buy into these. Oh, everybody's going to be a first round pick type of thing. Well, some of these guys got to fall, and if one of those two players and TJ Sanders, that to me is a day one starter. Got to get him now.
Yeah, it's true. I think Howie could trade up. Could Howie surprise us here and trade up in this draft? I've been wondering that for a couple weeks on the show, but I think he really could. With all these fifth round picks, these guys got a lot of extra picks in the next couple of years. This is a year you got to get production, and really it's going to be valuable if you get a good productive player on a rookie contract, especially with where they are. I think Howie could trade up in this sucker, Johnny Mac.
Could always trade up. I mean, you got to like the player. You got to. I think people get, if you like somebody and he falls in your realm,
right?
You go up and get him. And if there's a concern that they did it with Jordan Davis because they thought Baltimore was going to take him. They did it with Devontae Smith because they thought the Giants were going to take. They did it with Dallas Goedert because they thought Dallas, no pun, Dallas Cowboys were going to take it. If they like a player and they see a roadblock, but you got to like a player. If it's a cluster of players and you got four guys that you're comfortable with, and there's two spots in between, then you're not going to trade up, and you might even trade down if you feel comfortable.
Right.
So that is always that debate going on. But if you like somebody, like to use TJ Sanders as an example, and you say, oh, this team needs a defensive tackle, you got to go up and get them if you want them.
Yeah, well, the biggest hurdle with going up in my eyes is even to go up a couple of spots, John. It's a lot. I mean, it's going to cost a lot to go up even to, let's say, 25. Like, what do you think it would cost? Let's just run through that real quick. What do you think it costs if the Eagles want to go to 25 or 26 to grab a TJ Sanders?
That's a little bit too high, but I don't think they're going up that high. But
you think a 28, 29 range?
Yeah, I think very targeted trade up. Like I said, they went from 15 to 13 with Jordan Davis. They went from
12 to 10 with
Devontae Smith. They went from Jalen Carter was 10 to 9, I think.
10 to 9.
So I don't think they're going up that kind of leap. But as you go down, obviously, if you're using Jimmy Johnson's chart or using a more modern chart, if you're talking about, there's a big difference between, a top 10 pick and 32nd. So, if you look at, they got that cluster of picks in the 5th round. I think it's 160. I can get you up to couple of those picks, he easily gets you up to 28. So, I think, and the value there is trade. That's why we all talk about the value at 32 is trade down if somebody wants a quarterback.
Yeah, right.
That's
what makes the most sense, especially from a value standpoint.
Because quarterback changes the equation, and people are willing to give up more for a quarterback. Should they be? Not this year. Not in my mind. But
in your information gathering period, how many quarterbacks are we thinking are going? Even if they fall down the board, is Shedeur a bottom one if he falls? Is Milroe sneaking into the Steelers at 21? Like, are you learning anything more about what people like about these quarterbacks?
Well, Shedeur's not going 2 or 3. I'm pretty confident saying that. Cleveland and the Giants have come to their senses, I believe. It doesn't mean they won't trade back in and get them later in the first round, but the value's just not there at 2 or 3. You can't pass up Abdul Carter. You can't pass up Travis Hunter.
Right.
To me, the value's not there. That's what I've heard from people in the league. Now, Schefter's out there.
Back on Cam?
What's that?
With that being said about Shedeur, and you think Cam or Abdul and Travis Hunter being there, makes it a lot harder to pick those quarterbacks. What about the Titans?
No, the Titans are taking Cam Ward.
So you like that, but you?
No, I don't like it.
Sense that Cam Ward at 1. It's hard to pass up Abdul Carter, I think.
I don't like it at all. But quarterbacks are they're more valuable. They are more valuable, and they're desperate, and they're in the position they're in. But I think he's a legit top 15 pick. But no, if you're just lining him up against Abdul Carter as a football player, Travis Hunter as a football player, it's not close. But it's that way a lot for quarterbacks. I don't think Shedeur Sanders belongs anywhere near the top 10. I think, if you look at New Orleans at 9, that's a potential. With Kellen Moore, I would advise against that, Kellen. But they have
the Raiders, but they just inked Geno Smith to an extension.
Yeah, and then you talk about 20. I think Pittsburgh's at 21.
Yeah, 21.
But to your point, I think 4 might go in the first round, and only 1 might deserve it. And you can make an argument about Shedeur. I have no problem with somebody taking Shedeur later.
Yeah. 32. I would think 32 would be the floor for Shedeur. There's no way he falls.
I don't even think he falls to 32. I think the floor is probably 21-ish.
Yeah, I'm just saying if there was some sort of a run where you get past the quarterback needy team, you know what I mean? And then he falls like Lamar did or something, I would say 32 would have to be the absolute floor for him.
Yeah, I mean, in PFF, and the only reason I'm using PFF is because they're the first out with their draft guide. So
yeah, and I downloaded it. Their draft guide's excellent.
Yeah, and they have him as the 45th ranked overall prospect, Shedeur Sanders, and Cam Ward's 20. I think that's a little harsh on Cam Ward. I'd put him more at 15. And then Milroe's at 101, which is obviously not even close to being a first-round pick. Jackson Dart's at 134. And Tyler Show is 186. Now, what I could tell you is the NFL likes that kid a hell of a lot more than most of these draft people. The kid from Louisville.
Right.
And it would not stun me if he's the 32nd pick. It would not stun me at all. But I think Ward, Sanders, Milroe, Dart, and Show all have a chance to go in the first round.
Interesting how it plays out. Another quarterback-light draft. But the funniest part about it is sometimes when you go into drafts that are quarterback-light or quarterback-heavy, they pan out to be completely the opposite. So you always got to give it
Yeah.
time. We'll see what ends up happening.
Well, and that's not light, but I don't think 5 are going. But even a 4, that's not light.
No, I mean light in the talent, though. You know, like even
Yeah.
the top pick, Cam Ward, you can make an argument. You know, he wouldn't be worth the top pick in the draft, but somebody's going to take him. I'm just saying it's not like last year. It was quarterback 1, 2, 3. It was happening whether we liked it or not. You know, so a little bit of a different look. The one other guy, John, that was reported that's going to be visiting the Eagles was that William and Mary tackle we've talked about, Charles Grant. Now, Ian Rappaport put out yesterday, Charles Grant's visiting the Titans today. He has the Ravens, Eagles, and Bengals coming up. So that was from Rappaport. Met with the Texans last week. So that was from Rappaport. But we've talked a lot about that player. He would be a great, day 2 pick, or maybe even a day 3 pick if he falls far enough. I don't know how far he would fall, but I do like that player. Obviously, a William and Mary player. So you got to figure out how good he is versus how bad the competition was. But graded out super high. And could be a good player for Jeff Stoutland University.
Yeah, I don't know how you get him. I think you're in no man's land. You can't keep him you can't take him at 32. He's probably not going to last till 64. So
you think he's second rounder?
Yeah, he's got so much upside. I think somebody will jump. And plus, there's not a ton of like last year was tremendously deep at defense, offensive tackle. This year, not nearly as deep. So some guys like that are going to get pushed up the board a little bit. Campbell's going to be a big time pick. Membu's going to be I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. He might be the guy that shocks people. Then you got Josh Simmons. I'm not in love with him. Kelvin Banks. Connor Lee's a guy the Eagles have looked at. And then you have some of the guys who play multiple positions. Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson, another player the Eagles have looked at. Marcus Embo's another player the Eagles have looked at. But Charles Grant is, probably got a higher ceiling than all of those just from an athleticism, raw potential standpoint. But he played at William and Mary. Yeah. So it's hard to – he was a tremendous college player at that level, but it's hard to gauge level of competition. It always is. One of the knocks I keep seeing with him is he's not strong enough, which is typical of NFL offensive linemen, rookie offensive linemen. They got to get sort of a year in the weight room, an NFL level strength program. So that's kind of built into it. And plus he's, more of a luxury pick, I would say. Obviously he's not playing right away. I haven't seen much talk about his potential to move inside. And I think that hurts him. Everybody looks at him as a natural tackle. And here you want the heir apparent to Lane Johnson, but you also want to start him at right guard.
Right.
And then kick him outside when you need him, whenever that is. I don't necessarily see that. So I don't think it's going to work with the Eagles, but if it doesn't work somewhere else, keep that name in mind. You might be here a couple years down the road.
Yeah, exactly. That's what typically or sometimes does happen. So we'll see how it all shakes out with that. John, what do you think of so far the names that have come in? You talked about how you look for themes. And I'm going to get the one super chat here that's from our girl SMD Eagles, and she checks in. She says, "Good morning, gentlemen. Johnny Mack, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how much faith do you think Vic has in Ringo being the starter for the year?" And I think that goes well with the theme because you talked about earlier. Well, a lot of cornerbacks are coming in for visits, including guys who could be first-round draft picks. Maybe they're not so sold on Keely Ringo. What do you think about SMD Eagles' question here about faith in Keely Ringo to be the starter for the year?
Well, if you're talking about Vic specifically, I mean, Vic is he's tough, man. So until you prove it to him, I think, when people have brought up pretty consistently, well, Isaiah Rodgers was the backup last year, not Keely Ringo. And that's true. And why? Because Vic felt Isaiah Rodgers was ready to play more. Now, Ringo has a much bigger upside, but you got to prove it to him, man. And a lot of people talk about experience, and he likes that. But Quinyon Mitchell won him over. Cooper DeJean won him over. So Ringo could have won him over, and he didn't from that standpoint. Now, the Eagles are very high on him. A.J. Brown's very high on him. Big's tough, though. And I think the themes that are telling you, and it's not just Kaylee Ringo, it's Eli Ricks, it's some of the lower cornerbacks that people don't talk about, the A.J. Woodses of the world, Tariq Castro Fields, as I mentioned, some of these backup outside corners, I think it tells you that they don't have a ton of confidence in them at this point. Not that Ringo's not going to be here. Worst case scenario is going to be one of the best special teams players, but they also brought in Adoree Jackson for a reason, as an insurance policy. So it's to me, it's very unlikely they're going to be able to draft a cornerback at 32, or even if they trade down to 40, 42, whatever. I still find it very hard to believe they're going to be able to draft a cornerback in that position. They just have too many other issues they have to deal with, significant issues on the defensive front, potentially a tight end. We looked at a tight end, which is bizarre to me. I think they're trying to keep that under wraps for as long as possible. I find it very hard to believe. Now, if they draft Parrish later, but that's not going to help you outside.
No. 5'9".
So, it's going to come down to training camp. If he plays well, and that's what I think the Eagles are hoping for, he'll be the starter. But if he doesn't, it's probably going to be Adoree Jackson.
Yeah, it's funny because I would think, all right, if they draft a cornerback, maybe second or third round, but they're bringing in guys that are potential first round. Maxwell Hairston, Trey Amos, these are guys that are, as we've talked about them, they're middle guys. They might be late first, they might be early second. For some of them, maybe they go even earlier, depending on how the board falls. But it'd be interesting, man. I don't think they would do it. But I don't know why use top 30 visits if you're not thinking about it, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, that's why I pay attention to the themes. So, again, when you play the odds, if they trade back, like I don't think they're taking Trey Amos and Maxwell Hairston at 32, but if they trade back to say 40,
right,
and he's the better player than what's left at defensive tackle or what's left on the edge, they'll take him. So that depends on other teams and what they go and the players the Eagles like. But, you've seen, yes, they've looked at more cornerbacks than I expected, or most people have expected. But they've looked at a boatload of edge rushers and defensive tackles. A boatload.
Right. So that's still probably the leader in the clubhouse, but certainly shows you that if the defensive tackles and defensive ends all get eaten up in the first 25 picks, hey, maybe the Eagles are willing to go cornerback in round one, or as you mentioned, trade back a little bit and pick up one of those corners. So, boy, interesting. I did not think for sure that would be, even a chance at the first pick, just because they spent the first two picks last year in the secondary. And I'm like, oh, they got Keely Ringo. I don't think they're going to use that pick. They need that defensive line. Now, I still think they're going to go defensive line, but we'll be interested to see how that falls there, Johnny Mac. So good stuff there. One more super chat here. What the Duck Auto? I like that name. What's up, brother? Appreciate you being here. He says, chance we retain Bradbury and restructure, J-Mac. Wow. Didn't expect a Bradbury question this morning.
Bradbury. Well, they don't have to restructure anything because he's gone. They would have to bring him back. No, that's not going to happen. They already released him.
So he's done. So he's gone. So what the Duck Auto. Appreciate James Bradbury's time here. Obviously, was a second.
I wish he'd come back. Great dude, man. I wish, but
I loved what he talked about at the end of the year with the coaching potential. I thought I could see that perfectly for him.
Yeah, I asked him about being a coach, and but he still wants to play, and obviously it's coming off a bad situation. He'll be somebody to look at after the draft. He'll sign somewhere because he wants to play, but he's thinking about being a coach whenever he is done.
Good stuff there. Appreciate that super chat. What the Duck Auto. Johnny Mac got a couple of other things we're going to get into. I do want to do the projecting of the starters. And then I want to talk Sirianni. All right. We talked a lot about Sirianni last year after the collapse. All right. They kept Sirianni. They brought in coordinators, and you talked a lot about the setup. You didn't love the setup. We're going to talk about how that might change moving forward, what that means with Kevin Patullo in the room, and if Johnny Mac's thoughts on it have improved at all. So we'll take our first commercial break. I appreciate everybody being here. I do want to say one thing on the show today. Yesterday, I did lose my puppy yesterday. Right? So it's always a tough day when you lose your dog. But I do want to thank the people who reached out to me. I put up just a tweet of my boy on social media yesterday. I'm obviously down here in Florida, so not the easiest way to lose your dog, but I have some peace knowing he went right to my bed and passed on my bed, everybody. So I appreciate those who reached out. Tough to lose a dog. And John, as you know, you lost yours a little bit ago. It's a tough thing to do, man. And they really are truly a man's best friend. Nobody understood me like that dog, man. So I'm going to miss him, but I appreciate everybody for sending out their condolences. So thank you all for that. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back on Birds 365 in a couple of minutes.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Your financial future is on the line. Are you ready for what's next? At Leone & Company Wealth Management, we help young professionals, business owners, and pre-retirees navigate the complexities of building and protecting wealth. For young professionals, we'll help you grow your wealth, plan for your future, and make the most of your hard-earned dollars. For business owners, we provide strategies to protect your company, manage risks, and create a lasting legacy for both your business and personal wealth. For pre-retirees, we'll design a plan to secure your retirement, ensuring you can live comfortably and confidently in your next chapter. Whether you're just starting out, managing a thriving business, or preparing for retirement, we're here to help you take control of your financial future. The first consultation is on us. Get the advice you need without the cost. Let's make your financial vision a reality. Take the next step. Scan the QR code to schedule your free consultation today. And of course, go Birds.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
In our hometown, we all look out for each other. We step up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong as the #1 health insurer in the region. No IBX is always looking out for you.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Barrett's 365 here on JAKIB Sports. Appreciate everybody being here as we inch closer to the NFL draft. What are we, 16 days out, I believe, from the NFL draft? Let me just double check that. For everybody, 16 days away, man. Johnny Mac, this offseason is cooking with gas, moving right along. That obviously goes quicker when you have a team that goes all the way and plays for an extra 5 weeks, and then you celebrate for an extra 2 weeks. The parade was a week later, so the whole offseason was delayed, and now it's moving rapid fire here as we prep to come back for the 2025 season. So 16 days, Johnny Mac, from the NFL draft, brother.
Yeah, I mean, it really has creeped up a little bit quicker this year. And obviously, when you do follow the Super Bowl champions, it creeps up quickly on you. And that's what's happened. But Howie's got a big staff, so he doesn't make any excuses about that. And it's just part of the process, and it's part of being a good team. And same as the other stuff, when you lose players, lose coaches, lose executives over the years, that's a good thing because that means you're good. People don't want bad people. So it's better than the alternative. Even mediocre. Like, people always talk, how do you get continuity? Be mediocre and have a patient owner.
Right.
That's how you get continuity.
There you go. We don't want to be mediocre, so we'd rather lose some people here. But no, good stuff, Johnny Mac. 16 days, can't believe it. We'll have plenty of draft coverage, by the way, for those who are going to be looking for it. Don't worry, we'll keep you all posted. I think the biggest difference for the Eagles in the draft this year, I know it's a Super Bowl, all right? I know it's that we went longer in the year last year, but, John, we've been rich in the draft the last couple of years, if you think about it. We've had multiple first-round picks. I mean, we traded for A.J. Brown. We got Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith on the same night one year. You got Devontae Smith. I mean, now last year, you were a little later in the first round, and you were at 22. But we've been rich in draft picks coming off the Carson Wentz era for the last couple of years, and now we're kind of back to reality down at 32. And it's a little different getting ready for the draft this year as compared to what it was the last few years, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, the last time they won the Super Bowl, the 2018 draft is a tremendous draft. Not from a volume standpoint, but from a success standpoint. And that was still coming off. They didn't have a ton of picks because they were coming off because they gave up so much to get Carson Wentz, but they ended up with 5 picks and they all hit. And they traded down from the Lamar Jackson spot, got Dallas Goedert, traded down, then traded back up, got Avonte Maddox, who just left. Think about that. Josh Sweat, who just left. Jordan Mailata, who's an all-pro level left tackle. And then Matt Pryor's back, still in the NFL, started, I think, 15 games last year with Chicago. That is a successful draft for people that don't understand how you grade drafts. To have 5 out of 5 contributors for this long in the NFL, that's pretty amazing draft.
No doubt about it. And we're going to talk about Matt Pryor in a little bit when we get to the projecting of the starters. I think Matt Pryor has a good chance to be that starter. So we will see what happens there, though. But, John, he graded out pretty well last year with the Bears. I mean, not incredible, but pretty good. Graded out.
He's a serviceable guy. He's your floor guy. Like, you can't. You're okay if Matt Pryor's in there. Do you want him to win the job? No. You want him to be a backup because he's got 4 position versatility, but there's worse things in the world than having him play.
Yeah, no doubt about it. John, let's do that projecting of the starters. I'm starting at tight end. All right, we've talked about it. We haven't heard any visits. What are we through now? 18? Are we at up to 18 names? Is that what we're up to on the top 30 tracker, John?
I believe so. I believe we're at 18.
Wouldn't the Charles Grant be 19? I mean, I know.
No, Charles Grant was reported a couple weeks ago first, so he was already factored in.
Oh, so he didn't. Okay, so he didn't visit yet, according to Rappaport. But okay, so it was reported that he was going to be in there already. So good stuff. But up to 18 out of 30, no tight ends. Johnny Mac, are you going to project Dallas Goedert to be the starter at tight end or what?
Nope, still leaning towards him not going to be here. Again, it'll probably be post June 1st, I would think, just from the salary cap machinations it would cause. He'd lose like $9.5 million against the cap, which the Eagles don't want to do. I think ultimately they'll probably get a 4th round pick. It might be in 2027 or 2028, but Howie doesn't care. I think ultimately, I think we've talked a lot about what they're doing this offseason, that demarcation line. CJ Gardner-Johnson's below it, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, etc. I think Dallas is below that line.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult decision. He's still here, so a bunch of things should happen. He could agree, say, hey, I want to go chase another ring. Let me take a little bit less money and I'll hit free agency next year. That could happen in theory. But again, if I'm betting and I'm playing the odds, I'm still at under 50% that he'd be here. So I think the starter at tight end is TBD, to be determined. I don't think it's going to be Dallas Goedert. I don't think it's going to be Harrison Bryant, for our one buddy in the chat. I don't think it's going to be Kylan Granson. I think it's TBD.
How about Grant Calcaterra?
I don't think it's going to be Grant Calcaterra. But yeah, if they had to play today, it would be Grant Calcaterra. But
they had to play today, it'd be Grant. But other than that, you're going outside the building, all right?
All right. I still think they're going to draft a tight end relatively high, and they're playing the subterfuge game. And that guy's probably going to, they'll cross their fingers. He might not be ready because you're talking about a 2nd round pick. You're not talking about Tyler Warren.
Right.
They'll cross their fingers that they can get him up to speed. Not, they hate that term, but they'll try to get him up to speed. And you might have to go half a season with Grant or Harrison or Kylan or a group. But yeah, it's not going to be. And it should be Dallas Goedert in my mind. I'd run it back with Dallas Goedert, but I don't think they are going to.
I think the problem with the Goddard is I think they think like you, but the demarcation line they set wasn't, do we want the player or not? I think it was a certain amount of money and a certain amount of years, Johnny Mac. And then if Goddard's not willing to agree to that, obviously every contract takes 2 to tango. I think that's the holdup with Goddard, is that he wants more than they want to give when it comes to that demarcation line. And they've reached their threshold and he doesn't want that deal. So they're not going to get anything done. Now, let me ask you this, though. If nothing happens, John, if no deal gets struck, if Howie doesn't get the trade that he wants, what would happen with Goddard? Would he hold out? He's under contract for next year. I know he doesn't have a lot of guaranteed money.
He's not going to. No, he'll play.
Would it be a James Bradbury situation?
No, he would play. Dallas is, Dallas is by far their best tight end by, it's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. Anybody watch the postseason?
Then if you say that, could in theory the Eagles just hold out on Goddard? We're not giving you a new deal, and we're not trading.
Well, no, because the Eagles don't want to pay him what he's got the 5th largest salary cap number. See, that's what the Eagles don't want him to play under the final year of his deal either.
Okay.
Could they do it? Of course they could, but that's generally not the history of how they do things. So whatever he's owed like $15 million total. That's a lot of money. And the cap number, I believe, is over 11 million, which is a lot of money. And again, if he were 27, this would be easy, and they just extend him and get that cap number down and, kick things back as they typically do. But they've made the decision that this is probably going to be it. I think they've made the decision. I don't know that for a fact. They've been disciplined. And they look like they're going to be disciplined with Dallas Goedert. But neither side, that's the problem. Like the Eagles don't want him playing under that contract either. And and his cap hit is $11.76 million. So they don't want it either. And that's where you have the loggerheads.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with Dallas Goedert, and I don't think they're going to get a deal done. We'll see what they end up doing with him. Let's move to right guard, Johnny Mack. I'm going to tell you who I got, and I basically tipped my hand a couple of seconds ago. I think Matt Pryor is going to win the job, Johnny Mack. You look at his overall grade. He was on PFF last year. He was ranked 31st out of 135 guards, which I think was one behind Mekhi Becton. You'd have to double check that on me. He was 8th in pass blocking grade, 51st in run blocking. So a little different than Mekhi in that he's super good against pass blocking, middle of the road, maybe a little above middle of the road in run blocking. But, he played over 1,000 snaps last year, 7 sacks allowed. I think he's going to be the right guard. What say you?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they want him to be a backup. They brought him to be a backup. As I said, he's got 4 position versatility. He can play any position except center. And I think that's where they see his value. Now, I'm with you. Right now, he's the best of the 3. Tyler Steen, Kenyon Green, Matt Pryor. He's the best player of the 3. And I don't think it's, particularly close, to be honest. So from that standpoint, I get it if you say it's a meritocracy, but it's not how the NFL works. They want Tyler Steen to win the job.
Meritocracy.
Yeah. Kenyon Green, they're hoping, is obviously a tremendous talent from a physical standpoint. And then they might draft one. And if they draft Connerly or Jackson, they're starting. So a lot of hurdles between Matt Pryor getting that job. And I don't think he was brought in for that job. They know what he is. He's very competent veteran offensive lineman. But I think they see his value as that game day backup who can play virtually anywhere and not embarrass himself. And that's important, as you saw last season with guys who had to play. But I don't see him being the full-time starter because then it's like, you can cut Green. You might as well, what are you going to do with Steen? He doesn't have the same versatility.
Right.
So, they'll give Tyler Steen. He'll probably, unless they draft one high level, they'll probably start with him, and he'll have the chance to win the job and seize the job. Better not get hurt this year, and keep the door open. And again, if they draft one, that changes the whole plot. That changes everything. Donovan Jackson's here. Forget about it. He's your starting right guard.
We'll see. Yep.
Yeah.
What about my girl SMD Eagles brings up? I guess Keegan is still pretty raw. Do you know anything about Keegan? I like Trevor Keegan. Played a lot in college. It'd be hard to think he's this raw of a player. It's not like he was super young. He played full 4 years in college at Michigan. He was a 4-year captain, played a ton of games, started a ton of games. I thought he was going to be a guy in Stoutland U that would emerge in year 2 here. No?
Yeah, I should have mentioned him in the group. There's so many bodies, so I should have been. But again, there's so many hurdles between him and the job. Remember, he was a 5th round pick. We talked about this last year, and
I got you.
Anaya Smith, and Anaya Smith, if he continues to go, what that bought him was a year to sort of learn behind the scenes. If he plays like he played this year, he's probably going to get cut. Trotter, on the other hand, is going in a positive direction. They seem to have a lot of confidence in him as a 5th round pick. Keegan's, behind a bunch of players, and, we just mentioned 3 of them. Steen would have to falter. Green would have to falter. Pryor would have to falter. He might be ahead of Pryor from the standpoint of, again, I think they have a role in mind for Pryor, and that's game day backup. That's the versatility.
Right.
So it might be Steen, Green, Keegan, and that's still a pretty significant hurdle. Not that he's raw as much as you're a 5th-round pick. I mean, you're not.
Yeah, the one thing with him though is like the offensive line draft last year was so deep. So he went 5th round, but if he was in the draft this year, he might have been a 2nd or a 3rd rounder. Maybe that's lofty. Maybe I'm off on that. I'm just speculating, but I do remember the offensive lineman last year that was crazy depth at that position.
Well, it was, but yeah, he's not. No, he's not the kind of guy that would have made that leap from a trait standpoint. And I said, like, the one guy they've looked at that I would say is no doubt about it, day one starters, Jackson from Ohio State. Was he ever going to, he could have played 6 more years at Michigan. He's not going to reach that level.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
So, but, hey, guys develop, and Jeff Stoutland develops them better than most. And I don't have a lot of confidence in Tyler Steen. And I haven't seen Kenyon Green a day in my life, but I know he played horrifically poor in Houston.
Yeah.
So,
well, he's got traits. I mean, Kenyon does have traits. Maybe Stoutland can pull something out of him. I think he will.
I mean, that'll be a magic trick.
I know it will, but I mean, people were saying the same thing about Becton. I know not every situation's the same. I'm just saying we've seen it before with Stoutland.
See, I mean, Becton was a disappointment as the 11th overall pick in the draft. He didn't play like Kenyon Green. He wasn't. I mean, Kenyon Green was
trash
to the point that Jason Kelce was saying he was abysmal. And Jason doesn't go out of his way.
Jason, shut up, Jason.
Now he's he didn't use that term.
I know he did chirp him though. You're not wrong about that.
Yeah. He played really poorly, and I don't know what was going on. But you can't just look at the name and say that's a potential answer. Certainly until you see something. So for all I know, Keegan might be right behind Tyler Steen. And if that's the case, and they don't draft one, he might be a sprained ankle away from getting his opportunity.
Yeah, better be ready to go. Stout will have to coach him up, get ready to go. So are we concluding with another NA here on the right guard? Or are you going
to in-house, I would say Steen.
Okay, so Steen. Unless they use a high draft pick on the guy, like you said. John, let's move to linebacker. Now, this is temporary, okay, because I think once Nakobe Dean returns, your linebackers are set. But assuming Nakobe Dean can't go in week 1, that's not for sure. Nakobe could return potentially week 1. You heard John talk about, how he looked like he was progressing nicely from his surgery that he got last year. John said he was off the crutches by clean out day after the Super Bowl. So Nakobe Dean was moving along nicely. It's plausible he could be back for week 1. If he goes on the traditional timeline of his injury, probably wouldn't be back for week 1. Let's, for the sake of the argument or for the sake of the exercise, John, say Nakobe's not ready week 1. Is it Jeremiah Trotter Jr.?
Yeah. There's an example of a 5th round pick they're already pretty confident in. And yeah, they'll let him hold down the fort. And obviously they need to add some depth at linebacker. So that's not going to come till later in the draft or, after the draft, if it's got to be a veteran just as a backup. But they're pretty confident in Trotter, and he could hold the fort down, at least projecting. And I do think Nakobe will be back sooner than people think. But the Eagles have a history of being cautious with that type of thing as well. So just because a player wants to push it doesn't mean they'll let him push it. And he's had significant injury issues with, the Liz Frank as well. So,
yeah, unfortunately, Nakobe Dean has ended every year on IR. So that's not a great start, first 3-year start. In that front.
Yeah, I don't worry about the pec stuff, but the foot stuff and now the knee, that's a bigger issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shows you though, John, the body's taking a beating. He's got the pec, the knee,
yeah.
You know what I mean? And you wonder about undersized guys like Nakobe, who's a little smaller as a linebacker. how does the body hold up versus NFL competition? I think that's the biggest concern under Kobe Dean.
Yeah, and right now the Eagles only have 3 all-ball linebackers on their roster: Zach Ball and Kobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Ben Van Sumeren has made the move to fullback, although Nick did say he'll still work some with the linebackers and more, but I think that's more about special teams. I talked about that at a much higher level with Travis Hunter. I don't know how you do that in the NFL these days. I mean, 90% of your time is with your position group. What are you going to do? Oh, hey, go with the fullbacks on Monday, go with the linebackers on Tuesday, go with what are you going to do?
Right.
So you almost have to make a decision. So they have to add some linebackers, and they'll probably draft one on day 3, especially if they keep those picks. We talked about Jack Kaiser. I think he'd be a great fit on day 3 because he's so smart. and Vic, that's a big thing, obviously, with Vic is intelligence and football IQ. But he's also, and Jack Kaiser, I think, set the record at Notre Dame for most games played. So he's got to be old too. And the Eagles generally don't like old prospects.
I wouldn't either, by the way, if I was a team. I would want younger play. I mean, think about it. It makes sense to want a younger guy. If it works out, I mean, it makes
But when you're talking about day 3 guys, he'll be 25 in September.
Yeah, right. Day 3 guys, I think, is different because it goes back to that 3-year window thing, John, that you always talk about. Right? Look at things in a 3-year window,
So if I could get 3 years of good linebacker 3 play from, backup lineman from Jack Kaiser, I'll take that on day 3.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't know if the Eagles are interested, but that's just somebody I'd look at. He's going to be there on day 3. He's smart. He can run the defense. High football IQ, special teams value. It's exactly the type of player you want on day 3.
We'll see what ends up happening there. Johnny Mack, let's move to cornerback right now. Trot Jr. for linebacker, by the way. Cornerback, who do you got being the starter there as it sits today? You think it's a draft pick? You think it's a Dory, Keely? I'm going to Dory, John. I know people like Keely Ringo, but I'm just reading the tea leaves here. I like Keely Ringo, so I hope it's Keely Ringo, but kind of reading the tea leaves.
Hey, man, I'm Team AJ, and I'm going down with the ship. Keely Ringo starting. Right. Quinyon Mitchell, obviously, on the outside as well. Cooper DeJean in the slots. I'm going Keely Ringo.
All right.
And he'll have the opportunity, and he'll have a chance to win the job. Even if they draft a corner in the second round, he'll still have a chance, a lesser chance, and Adory's there. Adory's, an insurance policy. And I think he's in a good insurance policy. But I think of all the free agents they signed, I think he's the best one. Just from a pure football player.
Right.
And he can play inside, he can play outside, so he can be your backup slot as well as playing outside. So I think he's got same thing as Pryor. He's got some value of being a backup because he can play different positions. So I think the hope is, Ringo nails down that job. Well, I know that's the plan, but as evidenced by looking at some of these outside corners, they're not sold that that's going to be the case. And whomever it's going to be, they're not going to be Darius Slay. So prepare yourself for that. I know a lot of people didn't like Slay. It's hard to find 6-time Pro Bowl cornerbacks, even, at his age.
Yeah, no doubt.
Performed at a very high level, especially when you factor in his age.
Yeah, how about this? James M., my boy James M. What's up, James? He says, I'm going Ricks. Holy moly, Johnny Mac. He's going Ricks. He's been in the roster for a couple of years. They stashed him last year. James M's taking Eli Ricks. I love it.
Yeah. I think, looking at these corners tells you more about the the Ricks, Castro, Beals, Woods triumvirate than anything else. I would not join you on that bet.
Sorry, James M. Appreciate the comment, brother, but Johnny
Got
Mac,
good ball skills, but really slow to be an outside corner, not physical enough. But yeah, when the ball's in the air, that's how we made the team. He bought 2 years, man. He bought 2 years by getting an interception in Baltimore in the preseason.
A preseason interception, boy. That's a multi-million-dollar interception in the preseason right there for Eli Ricks. Curtis checks in, Johnny. Says, Z, what makes Brown, Hype, and Ringo different than any other player talking good about a teammate? I do think that's a fair question. A lot of guys talk about their teammates highly. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong. A.J. Brown is rarefied air when it comes to receiver talent, but was it a private convo? Was it, what makes
Yeah. No, AJ does not do that. That's why. He does not do that with everybody. So AJ's very honest. And yeah, he doesn't, it's not. Now, when you see somebody, I'm with you, somebody on a podcast, I've been like, I don't care. Public, I got a pretty good relationship with him. He tells me the truth.
Right.
It's been that way since pretty much day one. He believes in the kid. And he knows how to play receiver. And he's difficult to deal with in practice. And that means something to me. And he doesn't say it about everybody.
More honest. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. So Keely Ringo. Slot to be the starter. Look at my girl, SMD. She's hilarious today. I don't even want Ricks as a backup. SMD is out on Eli Ricks, so we'll see what ends up happening at the cornerback spot. John, moving into safety, they traded away C.J. Gardner-Johnson. As we all should have expected, CJ's been on a little bit of a social media tour again. They didn't say, they lied about this, blah, 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 blah. He's always doing that. He's commenting on Eagles pages.
Part of being in the CJ business.
Yep, part of being in the CJ business, as it's proven here at the end, even well after the fact, well after the trade. But CJ's gone, which means Sidney Brown. Who you got, Johnny Mac, at safety?
Yeah, Sydney is the one who will get the opportunity. And if they're playing tomorrow, yeah, Sidney Brown's your starter, but they're going to bring in, they don't even have an insurance policy at this point. And no, I don't consider Tristan McCullum or Lewis Seen. I'm talking about an Adoree Jackson-like insurance policy at the position. That's I'd still pay attention to that position because, Justin Simmons is out there. Has already talked about wanting to reunite with Vic Fangio. He wants to go chase a ring after the draft, and the draft itself. I don't think they're taking a draft. They're not taking a safety high.
I don't either.
But they're going to add somebody to make that more of a competition. But one of the reasons they traded CJ. Number one was cash. Number two was it's a pain in the ass to be in the CJ business, as he's showing. Number three is, and Howie went on record saying this, so I can say it. Number three is, they had a lot of high draft picks over the past couple of years that have hit. And one guy hasn't gotten an opportunity, and that's Sidney Brown. Why? Because he got hurt, and they want to give him an opportunity because they think really highly of him as a player and a person. Red Star player, which for the Eagles is a big deal. And they want to see what he can do with that opportunity.
Can I push back a little bit on the Red Star? All right, the Eagles care about it. Will Shipley was a Red Star player. Nobody wants him to be our starting running back. If you like a guy and has good personality or you like some of the intangibles that he brings to your football team, that's all fine and dandy. You got to fill out the roster with good players. I'm not pushing back on that, but what does Red Star mean about having him be a starter?
Yeah, I don't know who their Red Star players were last year. I think I
confirmed Will Shipley was one of them, though, right?
I think. Well, I don't know if somebody else did. I missed it. I'm one of the ones who said I guarantee Will Shipley is a Red Star player. I know I said that, and I could have been part of the problem. To my knowledge, because I asked, and they said, "No, we're not," because they don't like to say who Red Star because they don't want to disparage the other guys. So I could be part of that problem why you think that. So I just want to my knowledge, he hasn't been, they let it slip with Sydney, which is probably one of the reasons they didn't want to.
Is there any other Red Star players there that you're sure are Red Star players? Let's put Will Shipley aside.
No, there isn't. And I think because one of the reasons is they slipped with Sydney.
Okay.
And they don't want to. In other words, when you draft a bunch of guys and you put this guy up and say he's everything they want to be a Philadelphia Eagle, which includes on field, by the way.
Yeah, on field, off field, all sorts of things.
Yeah,
I think it matters. I'm not saying I like the process of identifying Red Star player. You want guys that check every box. You don't want to have, with all due respect to CJ, guys that have pros and major cons. You want to get guys like that in the room. That's what creates a culture and stuff. So I'm not knocking it. I'm just pushing back on just because Sidney Brown was a Red Star player. Like, he's one of the guys, John, I'm not really sold on. I hope I eat my words on him. I hope he's a great safety. But to me, right now he looks like a speed demon, athletic freak who's an excellent special teamer. And I don't quite know if he's going to translate into an every down safety. Now, hopefully I'm wrong again, but he's one of the guys I'm in a wait and see mode on him.
Well, I think everybody should be in a wait and see mode. I have no problem with that, but I do think that people forget where he was at the end of his rookie year because he got hurt and he barely played and he wasn't healthy last year. And I think there's a recency bias. Like if you went back to that 99-yard touchdown, I think people were pretty hyped on Sidney Brown. And then he tore his ACL the next week. I think obviously if that torn ACL doesn't happen, I don't even know if they go get CJ Gardner-Johnson. That's how high they were on him. And that might have not been a good thing because CJ had a very good year. I'm not trying to disparage CJ, but it's one of the reasons they felt they had to go get a safety. They're very high on Sidney Brown. Now, I'm with you. I have no problem with people waiting to see and taking it with a grain of salt. You got to see it, but they have not wavered. And if he did not have that injury, he might have been starting last year.
Yeah. Probably not out of the equation. Good stuff there, Johnny Max. So safety, we got Sidney Brown. We'll see what ends up happening there. Edge rusher replacing Josh Sweat. Is it Jalix Hunt, Johnny Mac? Who do you got at the edge to replace Josh Sweat? You could also say draft pick, or guys out of the room right now. But who do you got at the?
Well, yeah, well, if I can say that, I'll say to be determined. But I'll take it. I'll take it as of the guys here. I would say Ojulari would be my bet if they didn't add, but they're going to add something. And I think whomever they draft, because I think it's still even when I go defensive front, I still think it's more likely edge than defensive tackle. And if they get the edge, whomever that edge is, he's going to be the day one starter, unless he completely shits the bed in training camp.
Flops, which would be a bad thing. So we don't want to see that if they draft an edge high. But Ojulari, that's interesting. I'd probably go Jalix Hunt there. I got high hopes, John, for Jalix Hunt. Is that just benefit of the way he played late in the year last year? Am I putting the cart before the horse on Jalix Hunt? Where are you on
Well, I'll
Jalix
say
Hunt?
this. If you have a
A
grain
lot
of
of Eagle
salt,
fans, me included, are in la land on Jalix Hunt.
yeah, I think that's what it is. I think, if you have a grain of salt with Sidney Brown, I have no problem with it. You better damn well have a grain of salt with Jalix Hunt. I mean,
oh, man.
he's got a tremendous upside. That's one of the reasons, like, I'm not taking that kid from UCLA who's got this high ceiling, but very raw, just changed from off-ball linebacker to edge rusher. Like, they already have a big time, and I think that's what Jalix Hunt is. I think he's a big time edge rushing prospect. But, he played, I'm trying to look it up, and he played 339 total snaps.
Yeah, it's not very much.
And if you take out the playoffs when he had to play because of injuries and that kind of stuff, that's 21, 30, 38. That's 103 of them. So in the regular season, he played basically 230 snaps, somewhere in that range. I mean, that is nothing. And he wasn't a starter. He was the fourth man in rotation, eventually became the third man because of those injuries. And nobody's paying attention to you. Nobody, all right, and especially with a defensive front as talented as the Eagles. Now he's a starter against the shitload of good left tackles in the NFL. I need something more on the edge.
All right. Well, here's a good thing. I think it's going to be a rotational position, right? They're going to rotate a lot of bodies through that position. So Jalix is a piece. If they get in a first round draft pick, you got Ojulari, you got Uche, you got plenty of bodies. I don't even think they're all going to make the team. So there's plenty of bodies there if you have to go into rotation mode because nobody outright gets the spot.
I mean, I don't even believe in Nolan Smith 100%.
Well, my biggest concern on Nolan Smith is my same concern on Nakobe Dean. Can he stay healthy? He gets injured every year. He ended the season again last year with the surgery.
Nolan didn't get hurt his first year, but he barely played.
Guy was drafted with an injury, John. The first thing he said was, sometimes my shoulder works, sometimes it doesn't. We were all like,
true. That's true. That was a bizarre quote. He played like 5 games as shorter, but he played every single game as a rookie in the NFL. Now, he didn't play that much on defense, but he played a crap load on special teams. But I get it from the standpoint of he's undersized and that pec. I'm not concerned about the injury because pec tears happen a lot in the NFL and people get healthy and they're fine. It's not an injury that's going to affect you. But what concerns me about it is that, one of the reasons he probably got a pec tear is he's 238 pounds trying to deal with 310-pound offensive linemen and pushing him. And that's not ending anytime soon. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not even full bore on Nolan Smith, never mind Jalix Hunt. That's why, and forget about Ojulari and Josh Uche. Those are just dart throws. They got to get a meaningful edge rusher. It's not going to be Myles Garrett. It's not going to be Trey Hendrickson. So they got to find one in the draft. And if they find one in the draft or the trade market, the Jags just picked up their 5th-year option on Trayvon Walker. But
I saw that.
They need experience and production, and that's difficult to find. They lost a lot on the edge in Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham. A lot. Lost a lot at corner, backup corner. But they lost a lot on the edge. And all it is unproven as far as the eye can see. You got 9 games with Nolan Smith. You got 200 snaps with Jalix Hunt.
I think the most encouraging thing about Nolan Smith is that when he was playing good, it was really damn good. So I think you saw at least flashes of upside versus NFL
great
caliber
9
opponent.
games. Great.
Yeah,
9
so,
games.
but again, I agree with you. 9 games is 9 games. It's not a big enough sample size. But at the end of the day, we did see the potential of what he can be, and in big moments, in the playoffs, all through the playoffs versus the Chiefs, versus the Commanders, versus everybody. So I think that's the upside with him. But the concern for me is the injuries for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and how much is that on Carter and Milton and Sweat? Now you don't have Milton and Sweat, so you have downgrades at those positions. Yeah, Carter's Carter. He's going to be phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, I'm not as high on that. I'm very concerned about it. If you asked me my biggest concern with the Eagles right now, by far, the defensive front. And their best player might be on the defensive front overall. He's getting there. He's close.
Is he gonna top your list on the top 20?
I don't know. He's gonna be close, I'll tell you that.
When are you guys doing that? You could do it. I'm sure you do it post draft, right? Like later June or whatever.
Yeah, that's the dead period. Yeah. June.
That's fun. We'll cover that closely on Birds 365.
So yeah, I haven't even thought about it, but he's going to be definitely up there. He's going to be close, and he's trending in that direction to be number 1 very quickly. But Milton Williams is really good. Josh Sweat was really good. Brandon Graham, even at his age, was really good in his role, to the point where I think people forget, if Brandon Graham doesn't get hurt, and we never even talk about Bryce Huff anymore. If Brandon Graham doesn't get hurt, you don't even know those 9 games of Nolan Smith because he ain't playing. He's playing what he was before, which was very limited. If you look at Nolan Smith, 31 snaps, 23, 21, 31, 21, 26, 30, 22, 22. That's it. And that's meaningful. He was part of it. I'm not saying that. And part of that had to do with Bryce Huff. It would have been even less.
Yeah. Bryce Huff. We just talked about the edge rusher. He didn't even come up. Bryce Huff, man, he's out the pasture right now.
Because Vic loved Brandon Graham. Loved Brandon. Still loves
I would have tried to bring BG back. I don't even think BG wanted to hang him up. I think he would have came back for a year.
I don't know. He tore his triceps again. I think he did say that was it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Because that was coming. I was aware that was coming well before.
Yeah.
I don't think he wavered as much as people think he did. And he wanted to get back, and he did it, and he tore his triceps again. But Vic loved him, and he said it early in the season. He said, "Well, this is it. He can play. We're going to empty the gas tank." You know how many times I said that on this show. It's counterintuitive, but they're going to play him more, and that's exactly what happened. They played him more because there was no reason to keep him on a pitch count. And Nolan only took off after he got hurt. So if he doesn't get hurt, because at the level he was playing at, we don't even know about Nolan Smith. So that was a silver lining. And Nolan ran with that opportunity. But, we probably wouldn't even know if the injuries didn't occur to Brandon and Bryce Huff.
We'll see. I'm pretty. My biggest concern on Nolan is the injuries. But if he can stay healthy, I'm pretty confident he's going to be a very productive edge for a long time. We will see how that pans out. And I also mentioned I like Josh Uche. I like Uche more than Ojulari. You have Ojulari front. Obviously, the Eagles think so too. They paid him a lot more money than they paid Uche.
All money. Only reason I don't believe in either of them, but yeah, money tells me that Ojulari will get every opportunity.
I agree with that. All right, interior defensive line. You got defensive tackle. You lost Milton Williams, Johnny Mac. The last position here. Who's going to be the guy?
It's probably going to be TJ Sanders, but yeah, probably if they go defensive tackle, it's going to be the defensive tackle. If they go edge, it's going to be the edge as a starter, whomever. But if not, then Moro Jomo. Yeah, I mean Moro's up, and I have more confidence in Moro Jomo than Jalix Hunt. I would say that. I think Jalix has a bigger upside, but I think Jalix is so raw, and I think Moro is going to be a pretty good player. Is it going to be Milton Williams? I don't know about that.
Yeah. I don't think so. He was good though in his sample size last year, and it wasn't huge, but it wasn't too small either. I think it was 400 plus snaps for Moro Jomo last year. I'd have to double check that number, but he was.
Yeah, he did a really good job. He's a good natural pet. The problem with him is, and Vic has brought it up pretty consistently, very undersized. So the more he plays, the more susceptible they're going to be to, people taking advantage of it. Now, nobody could take advantage of it last year. I mean, one of the issues with Jordan Davis is, when people say, well, he doesn't play enough. Well, he doesn't play enough. And I say this all the time because they're too successful on first down. And then they can bring in their pass rushers on second and long and play those 4-man fronts. So it's sort of like counterintuitive, but for all the talk, and Jalen Carter's the one who gets all the publicity and deserves it. And as I said, he is just incredibly gifted as a football player. If you take PFF, Jalen Carter was 18th, Jordan Davis was 20th because they lump all the defensive tackles, and that's, by the way, PFF. You should stop doing that. You should make different categories. And Moro Jomo was 22nd. I mean, the Eagles had some high-level play at defensive tackle last year. High-level play. And Milt Williams, by the way, was the best of the bunch at 14. 14, 18, 20, 22. In the entire NFL. Now, most teams play 2 interior linemen a lot. Well, you consider them starters. So you round it off as 64 starters, and they have 14, 18, 20, and 22. It's outrageous production on a down-to-down basis. And they lost a big part of it. And now, one of those things, I always go back to Jordy Nelson, when Jordy Nelson was an all-pro and Green Bay had the best offense. And, he was the number one wide receiver. Then he tore his ACL. And Randall Cobb, who's a great at the time, people don't remember, was a great number 2. And then he had to kick up to number 1. And everybody else had to kick up the depth chart, and it wasn't the same. It wasn't even close. Now he's got to kick up to Milton's role. He's number 4, now up to number 2. Doesn't mean you're going to continue that production as the 4th one. Nobody's paying attention to you. You're the rotational guy.
Exactly.
It's not as easy.
Yeah. And Vic mentioned that, by the way, when he talked to John Clark at the Phillies game. He's like, not only are we replacing starters, but you're replacing depth guys too. You got to replace a lot of guys here. So it's going to be interesting. John, of all the positions that we just laid out, where does the biggest concern lie and where is the biggest confidence lie on them being able to, prevail with competence on this defense? really mostly defense, right? Yeah, we got right guard and tight end, but outside of that, the rest is defense. So could be the right guard.
I gave that away. To me, it's edge rusher. I'm
edge rusher.
I'm very concerned about edge rusher. Like, you don't have the Jalen Carter. Like, the Eagles are going to be good at defensive tackle. It's just a matter of, are they going to be great like they were last year? And even Jordan Davis in his role, I think is very good. Very limited role, but I think he's very good at it. Nolan Smith is your number one edge rusher. If you're just going down the list right now, number one, 9 games of demonstrated performance. Great 9 games, but 9 games of demonstrated.
9 games, right.
Jalix Hunt is number 2, 330 snaps if you include the playoffs.
Right. He had like 230, you said, in the regular season, which is not a lot.
Yeah. Azeez Ojulari, wasn't even good enough for the New York Giants. Now, and people could say, well, Saquon wasn't. No, Saquon had 1,000 yards every year, was healthy with the shitty. There was significant, not 2,500 yards, but there was significant production, even with the crappy New York Giants. Josh Uche, 1 year, didn't even play. Had a chance in New England, forced himself out. Kansas City didn't even play him. I don't know how anybody could be confident with that group right now. I don't know how. And if you are, I'm going to call you out and say you're wearing the Eagles colored glasses. And I don't think the Eagles are confident. As you heard with Bick, and you bring it up with John Clark at the Phillies game, even Bick isn't. It's like, what the hell, dude? Come on, Howie. And Howie will rightfully preach patience, because they're going to add, and I've said this pretty consistently, they will not go into the season with that 4-man rotation at edge rush. That I guarantee. I guarantee it.
What's Bryce Huff going to be this year? Please tell me.
But we don't even mention him. I think that's telling. I think they're going to move him or try to trade him, or I would run it back. I'd give him one more chance, because what the hell? I mean, why not? You're telling me if Bryce Huff can't beat out Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari?
This is what someone says. A bum. This is what Bryce Huff's going to be this year, John. A bum. That's what the fans are expecting.
Well, and then because they've seen a small profile, and they think, I'm not picking on that guy, but a lot of them have built up in their mind, well, Ojulari, give me a break. Give me a break.
Yeah, but if you're not sold on Ojulari, how can you be sold on Bryce Huff? Bryce Huff was good in limited role in New York Jets. That's it.
There's a hell of a lot better in a limited role than Azeez Ojulari was. That's the reason he got $51 million. Like, I think there's this perception that the Eagles were out on a limb on Bryce Huff. Like, that guy was getting paid. There were a bunch of teams after him. There weren't a bunch of teams after Azeez Ojulari. That dude got $51 million. Did it work out?
But if Hufflepuff hit the open market now, how many teams would be after him?
He'd still get more than $3.5 million.
I don't know, man.
I mean, seriously. I see your reaction. I mean,
well, no, I just don't. Yeah, I mean, the guy came here.
That's not like. I think there's a lot of people believe the Eagles. Everybody else would have paid Bryce Huff, Azeez Ojulari money, but the Eagles went out and paid him $51 million. Now, this is the smartest team in football. The Eagles fans should take pride in that.
Yeah, they are. I agree. Doesn't mean they're always going to get it right, but
no, they got the evaluation of the player wrong. The player didn't live up to the evaluation. They do not sign bad contracts. They do not sign bad contracts. And by that, I mean, for those who seriously believe that nobody else was going to pay Bryce Huff, People are lining up to pay that.
I know, but that's not the point. The point is that people are looking at what he can do for the Philadelphia Eagles. And in year one, when he was making $17 million, he didn't do jack shit.
No, I get that. You're not getting my point. My point is that you're
there was a big market for him.
Yes.
I got you.
There was not a big market for Josh Uche or Azeez Ojulari.
Right, based on the contracts they got, which has now been proven.
Yes, that's all I'm trying to say. Could they develop? Sure, it happens all the time. But this thought, and I get it all the time, is that the Eagles are stupid for signing Bryce Huff. Like nobody else was. That kind of stuff. Same thing with Jalen Reagor. Oh, the Eagles went way out of it. Like he's going to go in the third round if the Eagles don't take him because he turned into be a shitty player. The first round pick to ever be a shitty player. Monte Reagor probably blocked me again for calling his son a shitty player, but
he was a shitty player. He's still in the league. I think he's still in the league though. Isn't
he's still kicking. Bunch of New Orleans was going to take him 2 spots later. Bunch of teams wanted Jalen Reagor. Bunch of teams.
But is that good enough justification though for you? Like for making
it's not a justification. It's the reality of yes, every team gets evaluations wrong. A lot of times guys don't live up to their contracts, don't live up to their draft status. It is not an indication that all these teams, not only the Eagles, who are a smart team, but even the dumb teams like the Giants, there's not this weird disconnect of, oh, they're taking guys who'd be in the 7th round, in the 3rd round. You know, Chip Kelly tried that once with Taylor Hart, but Howie stopped him. That's all I'm trying to say. Every team gets evaluations of players wrong. Every single team. And the Eagles do it far less than most teams. So when they do get one wrong, and it looks like they got Bryce Huff wrong, certainly early, and who knows if we'll even get a chance to turn that narrative around. It doesn't mean that they overspent to get him. That's all I'm trying to say.
If other teams were willing to pay, well, then everybody was wrong. But I get what you're saying from a sense of the Eagles weren't the only team who came in and were like, "Hey, we'll give you $18 million," and went on a limb to be stupid.
That's all. They do not. I tried to get this through to Jody many times, could never get it through. They do not sign bad contracts. Someone point to a bad contract. They do not. They get players wrong.
What you're saying it's true. People will answer. People will say in the chat right now, what do you mean Bryce Huff is a bad contract? But from your perspective, I know exactly what you're saying. A bad contract would be the only team was willing to pay him that much money. Yes. I get what you're saying. I don't think he's going to be very much though this year. And the problem with it is I wouldn't even care if you didn't have a hole at edge, because you're not going to get everything right. We shouldn't sit here and expect him to get everything right. We prevailed last year without Bryce Huff. My dilemma with it is that now, as we just ran through, you got a bunch of darts at the edge rusher position, which is a premium position, and you probably weren't able to go and spend big money or recoup the position like you needed to after Josh Sweat because you burned that money and burned that.
Well, you got the evaluation wrong, but you know, that's, if you look at the season as a whole, a pretty good batting average. But again, to me, and I get why most people don't understand what I'm trying to say is they got the evaluation wrong. They didn't get the contract wrong. They got the evaluation wrong.
I got you.
Now, when you miss on a player and you pay them a lot of money, obviously that hurts you from a contract standpoint. That doesn't mean it's a bad contract. And I get why many people can't wrap their heads around that. But if you're Jake Rosenberg or Bryce Johnston, who are the Eagles contract, Jake Rosenberg did his job effectively. The evaluators got their job wrong. That's all I'm trying to say.
Over under Bryce Huff, 5.5 sacks this year.
Well, under. I don't even think he's going to get the opportunity.
Okay.
We
had this conversation a little bit ago just about the player, and we debated it a little bit, and
Well, I would do it. I don't think Vic will do it.
Right.
And Vic deserves more rope than me. But
where I did agree with you was he can't get worse, so he's probably going to regress back to the mean, or in this case, elevate back to
I would rather, and I'm sure Howie would rather, because he wants to, he wants that off his resume. I think he wants the player to be reclamated. Because people are just going to look at it in that myopic view of, he failed. He's not a good player. So that was a bad contract, which is how he understands. That's part of it. From his standpoint, but Vic's going to play who he wants to play. And all indications are he doesn't want to play this guy.
No.
Until that changes. But if you're telling me Bryce Huff, Azeez Ojulari, or Josh Uche, I'm playing Bryce Huff. I don't even think he played that poorly last year before he got hurt against Jacksonville. And I believe at least PFF agreed with me. I'll look it up.
Yeah, no, you're right. Before he got injured, he wasn't graded out. He wasn't productive, but you often talk about how sacks don't tell the full story, and you hate sacks for that reason. So I get where you're coming from that. But he didn't grade out brutal, but he certainly wasn't worth didn't live up.
No, he's not. He's not worth and he wasn't providing what the Eagles paid him to provide. So I'm not trying to say he did. I'm just saying he was providing competent snaps, which is not what you asked for.
Yeah, no.
For $51 million. Think about
that's what you're asking for from Uche and Ojulari.
Exactly. That's what you're asking for, a fourth edge rusher or somebody of that nature. And that's not what you got him for. You got him to be the centerpiece of your pass rush. So from that standpoint, he did not succeed. But, he was giving you competent snaps when he was out there. He's a better player than Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche. And that's why Howie talked about, rebooting, I'm stubborn, that kind of stuff. But if the defensive coordinator is not going to use him, what's the point of keeping him? So, that's the hurdle he's got to get over. For all the talk about it, I always, and I'm bringing up Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff got Zach Bond's contract. For all the talk about, the Eagles playing an off-ball linebacker, the Eagles paying a running back with Saquon's extension, those positions are still so undervalued. It's ridiculous. He got Bryce Huff's contract. Saquon Barkley, I always joke. Saquon Barkley got all this. Look at he's rescued the running back market. Will Fries from Penn State, an offensive guard, got $88 million after the year that Saquon Barkley got. Running backs are still shit out of luck. It's amazing to me how undervalued those guys are. Still. Will Fries.
Let's see what Huff can do.
Will Fries is richer than Saquon Barkley by a significant margin.
That's right. To your point, though, that's the way NFL contracts work. I know, brutal. But Abe checks in. Could Vic see another linebacker out of the edge free agents? I don't think so.
Boy, you guys are just greedy. No.
We see one Zach Bond becomes a first-team All-Pro. We're ready to move everybody around, John, and get a bunch more All-Pros.
Yeah, that is greedy. No, that's not going to happen again. No, absolutely not.
We're greedy.
There's going to be a very, very long time.
You hear that, Abe? You're a greedy motherfucker, Abe.
I didn't say motherfucker, but that's greedy.
I did. I had to toss in the curse today. All right. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. John, last topic of the day. We got about 20 minutes to play here on Birds 365. Appreciate everybody being here. Hit that like button. All right. We appreciate all of you guys for being here. Okay. Last topic of the day. Nick Sirianni. Last year at this time, we talked a lot about, I don't like the setup. All right. You didn't like the setup, John. I agreed with you, by the way. Full transparent. I agree with you 100%. You're bringing in Kellen Moore. What does Nick Sirianni do? What's his role? How much say does he have in this thing? Is he just a caboose in a way? The setup you did not like. How do you think that changes moving forward? Has your thought process on it changed at all? Do you like the setup more now? Now, maybe you do because they won it all, right? And things are back to normal, but how do you think the setup has changed with Nick Sirianni?
No, well, the setup, when I said I don't like the setup, the presumption was that Nick was forced to hire, go outside the organization.
Right.
And that's what I meant. I don't like that. If he's the head coach, he's the head coach. Now, it turned out he was the head coach, so worries over him being, castrated, some even said, were unfounded. So you had to give Jeffrey Lurie some credit there. Now, I do think Jeffrey Lurie demanded that he go outside the organization to hire somebody. And Nick, being more of a political animal than Doug Peterson was, agreed to do it. And obviously it all worked out. So it never developed into the setup that a lot of people were, including myself, that were concerned with. And by the way, I think if it did, it wouldn't have worked. But so nothing changes from the setup this time around, except that this is the guy who would have been the offensive coordinator after Shane Steichen left. If Nick were allowed to have done it. In the case with Brian Johnson, the Eagles were concerned that they were going to lose him to another organization if they didn't make him the offensive coordinator. And the concern was well-founded. They were going to lose him, and they didn't want to lose him. So that was the problem the first time. The second time, Jeffrey said, no, we got to go outside the organization to get new and fresh ideas and then play the exact same offense. But I digress. And everything worked out because Nick was still in charge and Nick was still running the show. But there was a big concern that, like, if Nick didn't like something, well, he couldn't do anything about it. To the point where my buddy McManus even, people were joking, what exactly do you do? Now people aren't joking about it. He's going to be maybe the highest paid coach in the NFL when he gets his extension. But yeah, this is the guy he always wanted to be the offensive coordinator. So, and by the way, if they don't live up to expectations, it's the same thing. Then it's going to go back to now he's a mouthpiece for Nick Sirianni. Now he's just doing because you saw it all last year. When they had bad games on offense, it was Nick's fault. When they had good games, it was Kellen. Oh, he's letting Kellen do what he wants to do.
Right.
Same thing's going to happen this year. If it doesn't work, it's going to be, he just hired his friend to be the offensive coordinator.
So you think the narratives on Nick Sirianni aren't going to end this year?
No.
Even after the Super Bowl? Come on.
No. I've been through this.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that they should. I mean,
No.
if you're anybody listening, I'm ready to give Nick Sirianni the leash that he's earned. Forget given. He's earned it. I mean, he won the fucking Super Bowl. He's been in 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, for crying out loud. The guy's got the biggest winning percentage. And I know he's got a great team. I know he's got a great organization and all the things around him are great. But, come on. At what point is the resume more important than my opinion?
They lose week 1 and it's off and running. And even with all the turnover, even with all the players lost, it's off and running. They lose week 1 and they don't play well offensively. Get ready, Kevin.
It's like the Phillies game. You talked about the Phillies fans yesterday getting jacked up about one loss. You know, the Eagles fans.
Well,
are
I remember I saw our guy Cilio had Frank Reich on.
Oh, it was excellent interview, man. Excellent.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'll check it out.
It's really good.
But you know, the immediate I got that 100 times. I'm like, Kevin's getting the job. Long before most people said it. I'm not saying I was the first. I was one of the first. Kevin's getting the job. And it was all the Frank Reich talk. And I said, look, Frank's already been the offensive coordinator here. He's been a head coach. He doesn't want to do that. And he and Nick are extremely close. I mean, extremely close. Frank Reich. Nick loves Frank Reich it's his professional mentor. And I only say that because Larry Karras is his college coach. He also, he's probably his biggest mentor. But after that, it's Frank. And, everybody wanted him to be the offensive coordinator. He wasn't going to be the offensive. And that's both ways. He doesn't want to take a step back. After being a head coach, and now he's going to be out in Stanford for a year, and the consultant, thing. Sure, they would have brought him back at any time. He's already a consultant. Nick calls him every fucking day. He's just not paid. He can call him any day. Now, when he's busy, like when he was a head coach, obviously that's different. Now he'll be a head coach in college, so it'll be different, and if he ultimately wants to come in that type of role or that type of situation, that could have been done in 10 minutes because the two are so close. But the offense, and by the way, Frank had, Kevin Petullo out in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And likes him as well.
Shane too. Talked about Shane in the interview yesterday.
Well, yeah, Shane and Nick were with the Chargers with Frank, and then Nick became his offensive coordinator in Indianapolis. Kevin Petullo was the passing game coordinator, I think, in Indianapolis. And Shane got the OC job with the Chargers before he came to the Eagles. But yeah, they all worked together. And Kevin's a big part of that. And Kevin from day one was Nick's right-hand man here. From day one. And nobody knew it. Well, some people knew it, but so this is a long time coming. And with all that, if it doesn't work, yeah, it's going to go bad real quick. It's going to go bad real quick. But guess what? Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, Kellen Moore, Kevin Petullo. The offense is going to look like the offense. It's going to look like the Philadelphia Eagles offense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. John, how long is Sirianni's dispensation card? I love the story you consistently tell about the 2017 Super Bowl, and you're saying, boy, Doug Peterson has a lifetime dispensation card.
I got that one wrong.
That turned into like 30 months, a 30-month dispensation card before he was discarded and thrown out to the wolves. How long is Nick's?
For the people that say I never admit I'm wrong. Oh, I admit I'm wrong. I admitted I was way wrong.
We're all wrong on that one.
And I have learned from that, and less than Doug Peterson's for this reason. One, he's going to make a lot more money. I've already brought this up on the show last week. Two, Howie and Jeffrey still think they're the key parts of this.
Are they right? They might be right.
Well, Jeffrey is, and Howie might be. But they're very important. I'm not trying to say they're not.
Right, but they can't coach the team. They can't
coach the team.
Right, and play the games. So I'm not saying they're the only thing of importance. I'm just saying maybe they're not wrong in that they're the ones who set the culture. They're the ones who create, a lot of the framework that allows Nick to succeed. I'm not saying Nick hasn't done a good job, but it's hard to push back. I mean, Nick wasn't here for all 8 years. They've had a great 8-year run here.
No, they have. And I talk about Jeffrey being one of the best owners all the time. I talk about Howie being the best GM all the time.
Right.
But they do have to realize, I think, coaches are a little bit more important than they give them credit for. I think they look at coaches like they look at players, and they're interchangeable. And if you don't reach expectations, especially when you're going to be getting the money that Nick Sirianni's going to be getting, you're even more susceptible for the quick hook. And then, if Nick Sirianni was just a dick and was trying to protect his job at all costs, he would have went outside the organization and hired a different offensive coordinator. Because if this goes wrong,
right, they're going to put it on Nick.
Oh, yeah. And their relationship, because of how close they are, if this goes wrong, it's going to go real wrong.
All right, how wrong? Because let's just say, for example, that this doesn't work. Are they going to fire Kevin Patullo and do the same thing they did last year, where they got to go outside the organization? Nick's not going to get his guy. It's going to be a collective effort, which really just means Howie and Jeffrey are going to pick the offensive coordinator. Or is Patullo gone, Sirianni's gone, and they're reset? I have a hard time believing they would do that 1 year removed from a Super Bowl.
No, I don't think it'll be 1 year. But they have a history of scapegoating assistant coaches. So you have that buffer. So Kevin probably has 2 years. Nick probably has a year after that, I would say. And some position coaches will go. So you have that buffer. Position coaches, then coordinator, and Vic's not going, then head coach. So you have that buffer. How long does that buffer last? And if there's not a high-profile position coach to pay the price, it might have to be the coordinator. And like I said, it's not going to be Vic. I can see Kevin being one and done. And that would be interesting from the standpoint of, because that would really piss Nick off, and that might change the relationship. But we're talking negative. This is Negadelphia.
Well, I'm just asking about Nick Sirianni. I don't think real. I mean,
but here's the deal: 8th ranked offense in 2023, 8th ranked offense in 2024. What's the difference? Besides the way they did it, they went heavy Saquon Barkley. I'm not talking about on the field, just production. What's the difference? They won a bunch of games and they won the Super Bowl, and they collapsed the year prior. And one guy's out, one guy's got a head coaching job. That's the NFL.
Look, I'm not going to say I wish it was different because we won the Super Bowl last year, but I was pretty fucked up what they did to Brian Johnson. You get the 8th ranked offense, and you get sent out like you were the sole reason for the Philadelphia Eagles collapse as an organization. It's on you, Brian Johnson. That was messed up.
Well, that both coordinators got. Remember, I mean, most people
a little bit more. I mean,
the defense was far more culpable, but I mean, it wasn't just him, but he was the one who probably should have stayed, because you had to remove Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. You had to. I mean, there's nothing. I wouldn't have done it during the season with Sean, but you had to remove both of them. With Brian, no, you didn't have to. But
you got the 8th ranked off. If you told him, hey, Brian, you're getting the offensive coordinator job, congratulations. If you get the 8th ranked offense this year, all right, 8th out of 32 in the NFL, you're fired. I'd have been like, fuck you. I'm not taking this job. I'm getting out of here, man. That's some bullshit. My first year as an offensive coordinator in the NFL.
Well, a lot of it was clouded by the collapse. The collapse was so ugly.
I know it was. It was very ugly.
People couldn't get over it. And the playoff game, the playoff loss was so ugly. Like, people aren't looking. All right, there's no AJ, there's no Lane. Lane didn't play in that game, right? That was last year's game. They definitely didn't have.
Played in the playoff game, right? Did he or no?
I'm conflating it with last year in Tampa.
Right.
They play in Tampa so
they had
much.
no Lane, they had no AJ, they had no Devontae.
Yeah. But they had no AJ in that playoff game. There were also other people missing. I know Reed was out. Because
let's be real. The other thing about that playoff game, Jalen Hurts was horrendous in that game. That was one of the worst games.
When AJ's not out there, they're awful.
I know. Jalen's really struggled in that game. Remember, he had the bad safety too. I mean, he just did nothing was working that day. I mean, we had 9 points on offense. That's why I used to always say to people, I know the defense wasn't good this year, but do you think you would have beat anybody with 9 points on the board? I mean, you're not beating anybody with 9 points.
Look, they do not play well when AJ is not on the field. To the point where I'm like, I don't think it should be that way because it's a wide, but it is. I mean, they didn't win this year when he was off the field. They were 1-2. They managed to win one game. They were 16-1 with AJ Brown. They were 16-0 with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, because the one game they lost is the one where Jalen got hurt 6 minutes in, and they were up 14-0, by the way. They would have been 17-0. They don't lose when he's on the field. And they don't win when he's off the field, which is troubling for the people that don't want him for some reason. But I digress.
We'll see what ends up happening this year. What do you think the offense will be this year? Top 10?
Eighth.
Top 8? Yeah, it's a good bet. It's a good bet for you. All
Eighth. Right. Eighth. Should be better, but I don't know. I hope it's more well-rounded, for not only for the team's sake, but for Saquon's health. Because I don't, I don't know if you can ride that horse like they rode it, man. Again, to that level. But maybe he can, man. He's in phenomenal shape. But
just an overreaction here, John. Deshay says AJ will be in Philly no longer than 2 years flat. Mark my words.
Well, I think you can say that about any player pretty much, except for quarterback, probably. This league moves very quickly. And he does have a penchant for doing things on social media that don't help him. And I love the guy. I'm very honest about that. And I've had that discussion with him. And he seems to know it. But then it pops up again. And you just saw what happened to CJ. Now, he's not at CJ's level, but, there's certain things. He's unfiltered, and he's going to say certain things that are always going to get one group of people outraged. And so I can't say 100% you're wrong, but from a playing standpoint, I think he'll be still playing at a high level in 2 years.
I agree. Certainly got the build for it too as well. All right, Johnny Mac, last minute of the show, brother. Your final thoughts on this Tuesday edition, 16 days away, John, from the NFL draft kicking off, brother. That's really the crux midpoint of the offseason. Then you have June, you have May. May's a good month though, because you react to the draft. You analyze the NFL post NFL
OTAs,
draft.
man. OTAs.
June is really that slow month, but boy, we're getting close already. 16 days from the NFL draft. Your final thoughts on this Tuesday edition, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, here comes the draft, and we know defensive front, offensive line, and cornerback. Cornerback is the theme of the Eagles doing due diligence. Think about that, man. After Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, you go back to corner, but they lost numbers, man. They lost Slade. They lost Rodgers. They lost Maddox. Those are, as Vic pointed out, as you mentioned when he's talking to John Clark, it's not only starters, it's depth players. And when you lose players that can play multiple positions, that's a big deal because you only get to dress 46 on game day. So, guys, backups got to play multiple positions.
No doubt about it. Johnny Mac, great show today, brother. We will catch you tomorrow on a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Appreciate you doing it as always, Johnny Mac. We'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, brother?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Johnny Mac. Good stuff there from Johnny Mac. John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Appreciate him doing it today. I thought we had a great show today. Talked about it a lot. All right. Talked about the projected starters, the top 30 visits. We're up to 18 out of 30 now. So really getting closer. The cornerback trend continues. Another cornerback, Trey Amos, a guy that could go first round. Is this team going to spend a first-round draft pick? I mean, holy shit, that'd be pretty unbelievable if they were to do that. Obviously talked about Maxwell Hairston as well yesterday. I like Maxwell Hairston a lot, but I don't think the Eagles are going to be able to get him. So interesting, though. We talked about the projected starters and then the greatness of Nick Sirianni. All right, Nick Sirianni. So good show today. Again, appreciate all of you guys for reaching out. For any of the men who know, all right, and women too, but boy, dog is truly a man's best friend. Yesterday was a tough day for your boy Big Z. All right, it sucked for sure. I took some peace knowing he died on my bed. Obviously I'm not home, but I love my dog. My dog was the best dog in the world. I know everybody says that, but I think my dog was actually the best dog in the world. So I miss him a lot, and it sucks, but all good. Appreciate the love you guys gave. Appreciate the show as always. All right, let me get out of here. I got some stuff to tend to down here in Florida. Appreciate all of you guys, though. Oh, Pump, I saw you chirping me. All good, Pump. I'm not going to be mad at you because I know how you rock. You didn't know, so it's all good, brother. He checks in and says, knowing AJ is close to falling off a cliff, would you take Emeka Okafor, Ohio wide receiver, if he's there at 32? I would if he's there. Brian, they'd have to be ready to move on, man, pretty quick, right? From AJ, I think that'd be too quick. I think first rounder this year. By the way, I'm not even too high on any of the wide receivers this year. So I'm going to have to say no, bro. I'm going to have to say no, but I hear where you're going. I mean, anybody who's not ready to have the conversation about A.J. Brown is, I think, in a little bit of fairy tale land. You look at what's coming on defense. Something has to give when it comes to the offense. The offense makes all the money. Even last year with the #1 overall defense, nobody was paid. Nobody was paid on that defense, so something will change. Maybe it's not A.J. Brown. That doesn't mean it's guaranteed to be A.J. Brown, but, he is the wide receiver making $30+ million. It wouldn't surprise me if something changed there, but we will see how it goes. Obviously, John just pointed out we aren't as good without A.J. Brown, so we'll see what they end up doing. But all right, everybody, appreciate you all for tuning in today. Pump, thanks for the super chat, brother. Abe, What the Duck Auto, and SMD Eagles. Appreciate everybody in the comments today. Hit that like button on your way out. We've been slacking big on the likes. What are we at to? 105. Come on, man. Smash that like button on your way out. See if we can get to 125 before we end the show today. But appreciate all you guys. See you next time, everybody.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.